Welcome back. My name is Lydia, or if you're new here, hello. Today I wanted to kind of talk about the mindset, or I guess the ethical dilemma that I'm having a little bit about owning certain animals. And I don't know if it's really a dilemma. I don't really know if it's an issue that I'm having, this moral thought. But it's something that I'd like to discuss. Because maybe I'm not looking at this in the right way. Maybe other people can shift my perspective a little bit. And that would be great, I think. So, owning animals that are kind of wild. What do we think? Thoughts? I was just filming a video about my moth friend that I have acquired, that I found in the wild. Not really. I found it unalive on the sidewalk, and I took her home, and she now sits on my shelf. So and then that got me thinking about just how far I've come, and with my nervous system regulation and not experiencing fight or flight anymore, and then into my future of wanting to own silk moths potentially, because silk moths are amazing. Moths in general are amazing, but it's weird because I've had this issue, I guess, morally with owning other types of moths, because even though I really love the idea of bug art, I love bug art. I even wear that bug necklace sometimes. Don't know where that is at the moment. Somewhere around here. And I think bugs are beautiful. Beetles and insects of all kinds. I think they're just so fascinating to look at. But there's something there that I'm like, okay, I could never own different kinds of bugs, right? Or I would feel weird owning different kinds of bugs because it's just it's like you're taking their opportunity to be in the wild, but that's not even really it, because they didn't have an opportunity to be in the wild when they were bred in captivity. But I guess more so it's the issue of the fact that their purpose is to be in the wild, where they have been created. Their destiny, their biological destiny is to live in a certain place in the wild. And that's where they, even though there are predators and stuff, that's where they are meant to be. They're destined to be there. Their whole structure, their body, what they're designed for, is meant to thrive in that environment or survive in that environment. And by even paying somebody to breed them and perpetuate the breeding of generations of them not being in their destined place of being, feels a little cruel to me. It does. And maybe that's the ex-veganism in me, because I was vegan for a very long time. I've talked about that recently on here, but vegan for a very long time until I got sick with toxic mold and I could no longer be vegan, or it was really extremely difficult to be vegan. And so maybe there's just some of those mindsets that just run deep still, and I don't know what it is, but are those mindsets bad? Now that I've had my mind open to them via veganism, is it bad that my mind has expanded to that? I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe I'm just not seeing things in the way that I should. There's a lot of animals that I love that I'm like, I just don't think I could own that. And then I feel differently about animals who couldn't exist in the wild or would have a harder time existing in the wild. But that, you know, something about them, maybe their gene is a little bit different to cause them to not be able to live in the wild as well as, you know, maybe their relative or something. An example of this might be a skunk. I love skunks so much. They're so cute to me. Like cuteness overload with those faces and their waddle. Everything and more. But, you know, a black skunk, it's like, okay, yes, you can own them. Yes, you can get them so they don't smell. They can't spray you. Yes, all of that is true. All of that's possible. But, you know, they could easily exist in the wild if they would have been given the chance. And by paying somebody to give me one, it's like I am perpetuating that breeding cycle of that and that continuation of the generations outside of their natural environment. Then I see ones with like a grayish white gene, and I'm like, okay. But they couldn't live in the wild. They would have a really hard time living in the wild, sort of like an albino deer or what have you. I'm not saying that we should take albino deers from the forest, but some people are sick. And when they see an albino deer in the woods, they are like, oh, easy target, you know, and it's kind of like, what the heck? They also have a greater chance of getting spotted by a prey animal or predator animal. My mind's a little off today, not here, but bear with me. You know, so it's sort of like, it's a similar thing to that, where when they have a different gene, it's like I feel a little bit more okay with it, just because it's like, well, life inside a home with me is a lesser evil, or like it's like better for them than if they were to try to survive in the wild in a life where they already have something working against them, I guess I should say. And I've seen people make the argument that, like, well, any animal's gonna live a better life with you in your home than they will in the wild, and I just don't ascribe to that. I really have a hard time accepting that, because it's like, just because we think that this is a great sense of living, shelter, there's no predators, just because we think that this is a better life, a cushy life to our human brains, that's because this is our natural. You know what I mean? Like, we have created this. This is what generations after generations have lived with and survived with and have seen flourish for our species. To say that, like, just using a skunk as an example, or a squirrel as an example, like, I don't know, a wild animal, just because a wild animal can live in your home and it seems better to our human brain doesn't make that true. Because their destiny, their God-given destiny, was to be in the wild. Like, they were born and bred to be living in nature. Even though there's predators, like, there's something even about that that's so instinctual, so ingrained within their whole biology, you know? And it's like, I can't I feel so bad depriving them of that experience of nature, of their, you know? And then when I think about it, I mean, how many times in my life have I felt like an other in the world, or out of place in the world? And it's like, man, and I live here, you know, where there's other humans all around. Imagine them being placed in a place where they have literally nobody. Talk about being othered, you know. And not to say that they are thinking these human thoughts like that, but I mean, there's something in there. There's something within an animal that's got to feel kind of othered in some way, or sort of out of place, or like something's not right when they're living in a home environment when generations after generations of biology has told them that they should be living elsewhere. Like, that's gotta do something for their being. No? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. So it's like, I'm okay with animals who have like a different gene. That would be, I don't know, having a little bit rougher time in the wild than, let's say, ones without the gene, without the odd gene. So I feel a little bit better about like skunks that have that gray lavender gene. You know? Or like certain coat patterns of ferret. I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, bunnies are a different thing because there are actually most bunny breeds cannot survive in the wild. Bunnies are a different thing. Sheep and stuff, they have been generation after generation capable and able to survive and thrive in a farm setting. So, you know, I mean, I do realize that generationally things can happen and change and even evolve to be a certain way. And then that leads me into the other aspect of things, like, okay, there are people, like the other aspect of breeding for a certain animal's biological change. For example, people are trying to create dogs that look like wolves and but don't have much wolf content or have very small wolf content. Some of them have no wolf content at all, but many do. You know, I think of like the Czechoslovakian wolf dog, and there are so many others that are escaping my brain right now. But where people have crossbred, and these dogs do look like wolves and they have very small wolf content, and my soul just feels like there's something wrong there. Some of them, where they have no wolf content, are very, very small. It's like we're at this point now where their lineage is so far removed from the wolf that it's like, I guess the damage has already been done. And so at this point, you aren't, like, when you pay for one, you aren't like necessarily paying for the destruction of the breed or of the two breeds, species, I should say, wolf and dog. So that makes me feel a little different when there's like little to no wolf content, but even the ones right now who are currently in the process of the evolution, who are actively trying to curate this specific type of dog by mixing wild in there, it's just feels off to me. It feels like, why are we doing this? Are dogs not good enough? The dogs that we currently have, are they not good enough? And same with the people who are breeding foxes. Okay, I love foxes. They're also one of my favorite animals. And I get it. They're so cute. Like, I get it. And a time or two, I have thought about having a Tamascan dog as my own dog, but they have little to none within their genealogy. So I understand the appeal visually. It's not like I'm like, why would anybody do this? It's more just, I don't think morally we should be. And maybe I'm wrong for that. Again, I don't know. But even with foxes, like, I'm just like, some people, they are just hardcore, like, no, they have domesticated them. They are domestic foxes. They're perfectly fine. Like, you can have them in their home. I want a fox. And I'm like, look into it, buddy. They are not there yet. They are not there yet. You know, you look into it, even just a little bit, and you start to see that the domesticated foxes really aren't at the point of full domestication yet. And so that means that people are actively currently right now in the process of shifting this breed into domestication. And I don't know, it's really kind of rough for me to see, because then you have these foxes that don't really have a place where they belong. And, you know, the sick thing is there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh my gosh, they're just like me. I don't have a place where I belong. And I'm like, honey, honey, sweetie, listen to me. It's kind of demented to be like, I have this problem, so let's perpetuate this problem in an animal. Kind of demented. Like, I don't know. I just, like, yeah, I might have experienced depression and anxiety a few times. Do I want that in my dog? No. Do I want that in my pet at all? No. Like, I just think that's terrible to create animals who have that naturally, who are going to have that within them. You know, I think it's just a really bad thing to perpetuate and to breed, even though the future of the animal isn't going to look that way, and your intention isn't for the future of the animal to look that way. You've just created litters upon litters who don't have a place to go, who don't really have a place where they belong. They can't live in nature, and they have a really hard time living in somebody's house. It's like there's these specific conditions that they have to be under, and even so, they aren't domesticated enough to be fantastic house pets. Not yet, and I'm sure they will be. I have no doubt in my mind that they will get to the point where, you know, they're in people's houses, and it's sort of like having a more primitive dog breed. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens pretty soon here now, you know? But it is just really, really depressing, even just seeing these animals who don't really have a good place to belong and have to have these specific conditions to even live under, to exist with humans. And it's just sad, because it's like this whole biological like difficulty that they're having to go through, because they have some genes that are still so tied to their roots, and then some genes that are being bred out, and they are, you know, having this done by these people, these human beings who live a vastly different life than they have biologically ever been used to, and but expect them to kind of bridge that gap. I find it sad, and it's like, I would like to be enlightened. I would like to be looking at this in a different way, and justify it in a way, because I think maybe there is a different moral side to this, and because there's a part of me that's like, there has to be, right? Because there's enough people out there that think that this is great and fine, and I don't, and so maybe they are thinking about it in a different moral way than I am. Axolotls are a different one that I've come to feeling okay with people owning, especially since they are so different than the ones in the wild, and their natural habitat is so dangerous for them to be living in right now. Truly, it is just this toxic wasteland at this point. And the axolotls that we see today that people are owning are so vastly different than the ones that exist in their homeland. So there is that. Although most people shouldn't really be owning axolotls anyway, so I don't know. But I don't know. I feel this way about a lot of different animals. A lot of them. I'd like my mind to be changed. I don't know. And maybe it will be. Let me know your thoughts on this, on owning animals that could exist in the wild. And I just, there is a part of me too that's like, okay, well, what's the difference between owning, you know, let's say a squirrel. I've seen a lot of people own squirrels in the past. I've known people who have owned squirrels. What's the difference between that and owning a bear? Okay, hear me out. They're different animals, and obviously one is a lot easier to house because it's physically smaller and isn't a predator so it's like, okay, there is that, but morally, just because this creature is smaller and isn't going to eat you, does that mean that we should, like, morally feel okay taking it from its natural habitat and putting it into ours and hoping it exists just as well, if not better, than it's what it was biologically created for? I don't know. That's quite odd to me. And makes me almost think like humans are so weird, because it's like we think that just because something isn't going to eat us and physically fits into our life, that automatically means it's okay. I don't know, it's a little rough. And even going back to my thoughts about the silk moths, I mean, silk moths, many of them, I don't know about all of them, I really don't, because I think there's multiple species of silk moth. But silk moths, when people own them and they use them for piece silk, I feel a little bit better about it. I think it's because these moths can't fly. They have a really hard time flying, like, if they can at all. And they don't have mouths once they turn into their moth form. So it's, at this point, everything would be working against them for them to even exist in the wild. And so their chance of survival and living a life at all is really in captivity. Which is also kind of a sad thing, though, on the other hand, you know, and this part kind of battles with me a little bit, is it's also kind of sad to even perpetuate that, like, well, they can't exist in the wild, and so therefore it must be okay that they live with me. But then the alternative is what? They can't exist in the wild anymore. Because of human intervention. They can't exist in the wild. They wouldn't thrive there. And so therefore, we should just let it die out? I don't know. Like, that kind of breaks my heart too. Especially since it was our fault. With so much inbreeding to create the non-piece silk. I don't know. It's a dilemma that I go back and forth about, and to just let a species die out is so sad to me. Like, that really breaks my heart, to let just a species completely eradicate just because, or completely dissolve, I should say, because they don't have a place. Like, it's like, I don't know, it just really is so sad. And I guess the alternative is keeping them and keeping them in captivity and continuing to breed them. I don't know. And using their silk and just giving them the best life possible while in captivity. A lot of thoughts. So even that I feel iffy about. Even though the process itself sounds like a beautiful thing, watching them grow and just being able to use their remainder of their cocoons for silk and figuring out that whole process, you know? So I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts that I have, You know? All exotic animals I kind of feel this way about, like, somewhat. Like, I could love crested geckos too, and I feel weird about that. But some of them come in real crazy colors, and I'm like, can those exist in the wild? Like, or is that like a gene, a colorful gene that just can't exist in the wild, or that would have a harder time existing in the wild? I don't know. Here's some thoughts. Do with them what you will. Please share your knowledge, share your opinions. I would love to know. Have a good rest of your day, you guys. Goodbye.